get started over here. We're up to, let's see. We're up to, this is on page 14b, Yudal on the base. Yudal Amud Aleph, sorry. All right, we're up to Yudal Amud Aleph, and we're almost at the bottom of the page. We're middle of discussing the 7 women prophets that the Jewish people had. We quoted before in the statement brings down, and the Gemara is asking who all these are. Sheva Nevi'is Man Ninu, who were they? And we enumerated Sarah, Miriam, Devorah, Chana, Abigail, Huldah, and Esther. So we went through Sarah, Miriam, and Devorah, and Chana, and here we're up to Abigail. So this Abigail, there's a story which is important. This Abigail, we read about her in the prophet Shmuel. She was the wife of Novel HaKarmi. When David HaMelech was running away from Shaul was trying to kill David. And so during their journeys, on one of their journeys, there was, David sent these, some of his people to go to the Novel HaKarmi to get some food for them. And he rejected them. And he spoke very disparagingly to them. And then later on, David was going to kill all of the family of this Novel HaKarmi. Abigail was the wife of Novel HaKarmi. She was his wife. And she went quickly before David and his men came, and she basically appeased him. And she brought him gifts and she brought him food. And she convinced him not to do anything to her family. And she saved their lives. Eventually, Novel HaKarmi, her husband died. And David HaMelech ended up marrying Abigail as well. So this Abigail, the Gemara is going to say, she said something which proved to us that she was a prophetess, that she was a prophet. Because we'll see one of the discussions that the Gemara brings down that she had with David HaMelech was something that she said was a prophecy. And the prophecy became true. That's how we know that she is a prophet also. So that's how the Gemara is going to say. So first of all, the Gemara brings down some of the story that took place over there. So the Gemara, Abigail. So this Abigail, Diksiv, because the pasuk says in the verse, and this is in Shmuel Aleph, and this is in chapter 25. So over there it says, V'hoyo hi reicheves al hachamer. And she was riding on the donkey. She was riding on the donkey, like I said before, to try to dissuade David from killing the whole family of Novel HaKarmi for the way he behaved. So she was riding on the donkey. V'yoyredes b'seiser hahor. And she was descending from the hidden of the mountain. What is this? She was descending the mountain. What does it mean, b'seiser hahor, in the hidden of the mountain? So this is what the Gemara asks. So the Gemara says, what does it mean, b'seiser hahor, in the hidden of the mountain? It should have said, min hahor, from the mountain. She was descending from the mountain. Mi boyile, should have said. Listen, the whole verse reads as follows. She was riding on the donkey. she was descending on the hidden of the mountains. And David and his men were descending towards her, and she meets up with them. So the Gemara says there's some hint over here. It says she was riding on the donkey, and it says she was descending b'seiser ha'har. So the Gemara says b'seiser ha'har. Why does it say b'seiser ha'har? Min ha'har mibayla. She was descending from the mountain, and that's what she made up with them. There's something about hidden. There's something hidden in this word that it's hidden. There's something hidden over here. And this hints to a discussion that Abigail had with David, as we're going to see, that David requested to be with her. And she was telling him that she may not be clean. She may have dam, she may have blood that wouldn't allow for him to have a relationship with her. And as we'll see later on, and she was a married woman besides everything else. So we're talking about not being clean, not the dam. So the word seiser means hidden. That talks about things that come from the inside, the hidden parts of the body. That is a reference to the dam. That's a reference to the blood that is from the woman. So Omar Rabba Bar Shmuel. So therefore, Rabba Bar Shmuel says, Al iske dam habom min hastorim, about the business of blood, which means issues that deal with blood, which comes min hastorim, comes from the hidden parts of the body, from the inside of the body. That's why it says b'seiser. So what's going on over here? So the Gemara, so he says like this: Not ladam, she took blood, veher osoloi, and she showed it to him to ask him, is this dam make her a nida, or is this dam which is okay? Omar lo. So he said to her, V'chimarim dam balaylo, do you then show blood at nighttime? Which means, in order to inspect and in order to verify whether this is a dam which is toher or not, we say, the Gemara says there is 5 colors of blood that make it tameh. So to inspect if this is one of the 5 colors, we don't do it at nighttime. Now, wait a minute. Who says we're talking about the nighttime over here? It just says that she met up with David. How do we see here that he said, now, we don't show, it wasn't nighttime. How do we know it was nighttime? So Rashi says like this. It says in the pasuk like this. David was so angry at this novel Hakarmi for the way he treated him by refusing him and degrading, being disparagingly to him, that it says in Shmuel Aleph, pasuk Chav Hei, he says, Im ashir novel. If I leave over, in other words, I'm not going to leave over to novel, ad eir haboker, till the morning, means all night, I'm going to wipe him all out. Mashtin Bekir. A male, when in the Tanakh, they want to say a male, they call him a Mashtin Bekir, who pees on the wall, which means a male. He says, I'm going to wipe them all out. So, since he says till the morning, it means they were already at nighttime. He says, by the time the morning comes, they'll be all dead. So it means that this was at the nighttime. Shema no. So we hear from David Balayla. So what was his argument? She's trying to show him the blood. I mean, I don't understand this. So it's better not to show the blood. So then you might be doing an avera. So he says, "V'chimarim dam balayla." do you then show blood at nighttime in Tomei or Toyer, whether it's clean, impure or clean? But we need to inspect the color. If this is one of the 5 bloods which are tamei by a woman, so we don't do that at night. Now, in this piece of Gemara, we don't learn yet that he asked for having an intimacy with her. And it seems like the reason she was asking about the blood, I mean, was it just a question she wanted to know about as far as this piece? Maybe she wanted to know whether she's clean or not to be with her husband. I don't know. It doesn't say here, but later on in the Gemara, we'll see that this actually had to do with him, with David HaMelech. Because later on we'll see that he said that you protected me from 2 averis. And we'll see in a minute. So, Amr Eloi. So she said to him, now you're coming on a mission to kill the whole family of Novel HaKarmi. So that's a judgment call. So she says to him, you're telling me that you don't rule about blood at the nighttime. What about killing a whole people, all the families at nighttime? We know v'chidonim din nefoshes balaylo. Do we then make capital cases at nighttime? V'chidonim din nefoshes balaylo. Because the pasuk in Yirmiyahu, Perik Chaf Aleph, over there it says dinu laboiker mishpat, that you judge in the morning. You do the judgment. You don't judge cases or capital cases. You don't judge at nighttime. Uksiv, and there's also another one. It was talking about the people that had the relationships over there with the Midianite woman. So it says v'hoika oisom laHashem neged hashemesh. Put them out next to Hashem by the sun, meaning the judgment needs to be done in the daytime. So how are you coming to kill the whole family of Novel at nighttime? He asked her how he can't rule about the dam because it's at nighttime. And she's asking him, so how could you make a judgment at nighttime? So he says, well, this is not a judgment case. Omar Lo, so he answered her, that's David saying to Abigail, he has rebelled against the government. He went up against David. We don't need to judge him. He's already judged. If you go against the government, the king, and David HaMelech considered himself a king, you don't have to judge him. So she says, Amrullah, so she said to him back, Adain Shaul Kai? Shaul is still alive. And your fame has not gone out yet in the world. In other words, people don't know that you're a king. You can't just judge them. So he says, you can't kill them because you're not a king yet. Okay. So Amar Lo, so what did he tell her? He says to Bruch Taimoch, blessed is your reasoning, Bruch Ad, blessed are you, Asher Kili Soni. You had prevented me. You prevented me from a violation. A, from having intimacy with her, and B, from killing the family. She says, Kilisani Hayoim Hazeh. Today, you prevented me today, Miboy Bedomim, from coming into blood. That's the end of the verse. So he says, Domim Tartimashma. Domim means 2 bloods. It doesn't say you prevented me from dam. Tartimashma, which means base domim, two bedomim, which is the dam nida, because she wasn't clean, ushvichas damim, and or he couldn't judge, and also killing the family because he's not a murdered machos. She told him. So this teaches us all. So apparently this happened later on. Elam Melamed, this teaches us shegilsa es shoika. She revealed her thigh. V'holach la'oira gimel parsois, and he went for the light that permeated from her shoik 3 parsos far away. I mean, I'm thinking this is just trying to give it metaphorically, seeing how beautiful she was or how impressed he was, and he went along with that light or with that fire. He went for Gim Parsos. I'm not sure exactly. I'm sure the commentaries explain exactly what this means, but this Shegilsa Shoika, meaning Vinis Avelo, Veloit Vitova, Veloy Shamaloi. She desired her, he desired her, and he asked her, but she didn't listen to him. Kidim Messiah Va'ozel. As we is going to conclude. This fact we learn from the end of the story. So maybe in the beginning it was just not as clear, but this whole thing that he demanded her, he wanted her, we learn from the end of the story. Why? The Gemara says, Omar lo, he says, Hashmi, listen to me. In other words, he wanted to be with her. Omar lo, so she answered to him, Loi tia zois loch lepuka. This should not be to you to a stumbling, or puka meaning a pig berkaim, to weaken of your knees, a fall for you. So basically, she says this should not be. You shouldn't fail. In this case, he told her, this particular case should not be for you. So the question is, what did she mean? This should not be lefuka. She says, as if to say, well, you might fail elsewhere, but don't fail this time. He says, let it not be for you to a failure this time. So she implied that this shouldn't be, but there's another failure that she's talking about. So the Gemara says Zois, since it says this, Miklal, so that we can derive the Ikachrita, that there is other. Umayniu, what is the other case? And the Gemara says, Maisa de Bathsheba. That was the story with Bathsheba, in which Uriah Achiti and David HaMelech had him killed, and then he took his wife. First he took his wife, he saw her, he desired her, as the whole story with King David. So she told him, this should not be for a Pukah, although you're going to fail later on. How did she know what's going to happen in the future? She says, don't fail this time, because you're going to fail in the future. Did David fail in the future? The answer is yes. Umaskono, at the end it was like that. What happened at the end? At the end he failed with Bathsheba, right? So how did she know? That means she was a prophet. That's how we know that Abigail was a prophet. That's what we're saying, because of the prophecy that she says that there's going to be another case, and it actually happened. But I guess sometimes when you see that somebody can fail like that, you can estimate and say, hey, probably come across something else, but this seemed like a vadai. She knew for sure. And that was the prophecy. Rashi says, lefuka, what does it mean lefuka? Kimoy pik birkayim, that is a stumbling of the knees, when your knees falter. Ochi garsina. This is the version of the Gemara. Zois meklal di'ika. Since we say Zois, it must be that there's others. Umay nihu, what is the others? So that's the Maisa. We have it like Bas Sheva. Umaskona ochi. This is actually the way we have it in our Gemara. Rashi gives the Girsa. Apparently there was another Girsa. Ochi pirusha. This is the meaning. Midika amrolei. From the fact that she says to him, this should not be for you for a stumbling. Miklal, she snaps aloi, that she prophesies to him that in the end he's going to stumble and there's going to be another intimacy over there. Umayni, what was the case? Bathsheba. It was Bathsheba. Umaskona hoche havi. This was the end. Soif also lekach. What happened to it? Alma, we see Nevi Yahavis, that she was a prophet. That her prophecy was fulfilled. She said that he was going to fail, and he did. Okay, so now the Gemara teaches another verse over there in that discussion. She says, "V'hoiso nafshi nefesh adoini tzrura b'tzrura chayim," and the soul of my master will be bound in the bound of life. Let's see the full pasuk over there. Vayokom somebody comes to chase you. You'll be bound with and the soul of your enemies. So basically, she's blessing him over there. I'm just trying to think here. All right, we'll go on. And then the pasuk says, "Ki have mifatra minei amralei." As she was saying goodbye from him, she said to him, "Behetiv Hashem la'adoini." When God will do good to my master, v'zacharta es amosecha, and remember your maidservant. So she was asking him that when God does good to you, you should remember me. So this is what Abigail asked him. So I guess she was, telling him and praying for him and wishing him. And in the meantime, she also didn't forget about herself. She put in a few good words about herself. So the Gemara says, Rav Nachman says, there's a saying that people say, Itzo bahadi shuta pilcha. While she is talking, she's still weaving. Meaning, she's talking about one thing, but then she's weaving, she's already plotting and figuring out the next step. Rashi. While she's talking, she's weaving. To say, while she is with him, talking about her husband, in other words, she's talking to him to protect him. She didn't want him to kill. She went in, she besieged David not to kill her, to spare her husband, Naval HaKarmi. But in the meantime, she mentions herself also. She's talking about him, is Kidul Esatzmei. Sheim Yomus Yisraelu, so that if he dies, he will marry her. He says, remember me. So she got a good word in for herself. That's one expression people say. You're talking about, while you're talking, throw in a good word. So, or there's another expression, Ikada Amri, Shofil ve'ozil bar Avzo. A bar Avzo is a duckling. A duck is going in a looking down, and but in his eyes he looks metaife, he looks far away. So he's pretending, just not seeing anything. But the eyes looked very far. They look for a distance. So this is also the, anyways, this takes care of Abigail, the prophet. We're going to move on to Huldah. Huldah was also a prophetess. The Ksiv, it says in Malachim Beis, in Perichov Beis. So over there, we have a whole story. King Yoshio, he was a righteous king. And they inspected in the Beis Hamikdash, and they found a sefer. And he thought that this may be something occurs, so he sent to Huldah. She was a Nevi, a Huldah Neviah. He sent to her to find out. So how do we know that Huldah was a Neviah? The pasuk says, "Vayelech Chilkiyo hakoyin v'achikom v'achber gomer." The full pasuk reads, "Vayelech Chilkiyo hakoyin v'achikom v'achber v'shofon v'asoyo." They went to Huldah HaNeviah, to the prophet Huldah the Neviah. She was the Eshes Shalom ben Tikva ben Charchas, the wife of Shalom, the son of Tikva, the son of Charchas. Shomer HaBegodim, he watched the garment. V'hi yosheves b'Yerushalayim. B'Mishnah, she was sitting in Yerushalayim. And the second, by Dabre Leo, and they spoke to her. Basically, the Chilkiyo, HaKoyin, Achikim, Achber, they were sent by Yeshio from the Beis Hamikdash to find out what's going on. What is the meaning of that sefer that they found in the Beis Hamikdash? So here we see in the pasuk clearly that Huldah was a Neviah. Okay, so the Gemara asks, but that was the time of the prophet Yirmiyahu. For the Gemara, Yirmiyahu, where Yirmiyahu was, Heichi misnabia ihi. How was she allowed to prophesy? Now, how was the Huldah Neviah? How would Yirmiyahu, he was the prophet, how would he let her prophesy? So Rashi, in the place of Yirmiyahu, how could she be a prophet? And Rashi explained, what does it mean? How do we know Yirmiyahu was then? Because Yirmiyahu Omad Mishnas Yud Gimel Yoshio. The 13 years of King Yoshio, that's when Yirmiyahu stood up. That's when he was the prophet. Shenemar, as it says, Asher Hoyu Dvar Hashem Yirmiyahu v'Goymer. Yirmiyahu Aleph, over there the pasuk says, it was 13 years to the prophet Yoshio. V'Hasefer, and that book that they found, Nimtzo, that they sent to find Abba Huldah, was found Bishnas Yud Chesle Yoshio. That was found on the 18th year of Yoshio. The Olav, and about that book, Sholach Etzel Huldah. That's why he sent to Huldah. So that means that Yirmiyahu was around then. So the question is, how did she prophesize when Yirmiyah was the prophet then? So the Gemara, Amri Brei Rab Bishmei de Rab, in the yeshiva of Rav, they said the name of Rav, that Hulda Krevas Yirmiyah Hoysa, that she was a relative of Yirmiyah, Veloy Hava Makpid Alei. He didn't care about her, he wasn't particular with her. He allowed her to prophesy even during his prophecy. Okay, I guess they were mishpacha, they were relatives, so it was okay with them. So that answers how Hulda was prophesying while Yirmiyah was there. But why would Yoshia send to Hulda versus sending to Yirmiyah if he wanted to know what's going on? So Yoshia himself, how did he allow left Yirmiyah, didn't ask Yirmiyah, and he sends to the Hulda? Why does he send to her? Amri Dvei Rav Shila says, Rav Shila, because women have compassion, they're more compassionate. He was looking for compassion. He was worried about the bad sign, maybe. By the way, Hulda told him very sharp about the prophecy over there, but he figured he'd try sending to Hulda Nevi'ah because women are more compassionate. That's one answer. That's in the Shiva of Shila, the answer. So Rabbi Yechon says, Yirmiyah lahava hosel. Yirmiyah actually wasn't there. Where was Yirmiyah? Shaholach lahachzir aseres hashvotim. He went to bring back the 10 tribes. As we learned, the Jewish kingdom was divided in 2 parts. The northern with the 10 tribes, and Binyamin and Yehuda were in Yerushalayim, was the southern part. And the 10 tribes were exiled 11 years before the Yerushalayim and Yehuda were exiled. So at that point, Yehuda went to bring back the Aseres HaShvatim, so he wasn't there to answer. Fragte Gemara, how do we know that they returned? It says they returned. How do we know that they returned? Because it says in Yecheskel, and this is said in the rebuke of Yecheskel. Like this, we have a din, we have a halacha, that when you sell a piece of property, your property ends up going back to you when the Jubilee year comes, the 50th year. So basically, ha'aretz lo yitamachar letzmisus, the pasuk says, you can't sell Eretz Yisrael for permanently, and everybody gets back their property by the Yovel. But the Yovel only applies when we have most of the Jews in Eretz Yisrael. In other words, all the Jews that need to be in Eretz Yisrael. If there's no Eretz Yisrael, no all the Jews, then we don't have the Jubilee year. And if we don't have the Yovel, we don't return the properties. And Yecheskel was trying to warn them, and he says to them, there will be no Jubilee year because you're going to be exiled. So the way he put it is, he says, Ki hamoicher, the one who says, El hamemker lo yoshev, will never get back to his sale. In other words, if you sold something, you won't get it back. It's permanent. Why? Because there's no Jubilee year. You won't have a Jubilee year. He was threatening them with the exile. Now, when was Yecheskel saying this? When was Yecheskel saying this? If the 10 tribes have already been exiled, so there was no Jubilee year anyways, because the 10 tribes were not in Eretz Yisrael. So why is he threatening them that you're not going to get back your sale? There's not going to be a jubilee here because the Jews were not going to be there. But they weren't there already because they were exiled from before. So that means that they came back. And therefore, it reinstituted the jubilee year. And he threatened them that they're going to be chased out, and that's why it's not going to be. So that proves to us that the 10 tribes have been brought back. Let's look at the Rashi. This was said by Yecheskel. He prophesied within the 14th year, Shebein Golus Yechonya. Not sure the word Yudalit over here. I thought it was 11 years. So it actually has to say not 14, it has to say 11. I looked it up in the Gemara now. In the there's a correction over there. This has to be within the 11 years. Basically, from the first, between the first and the second exiles, between the first exile of the, I'm just going to make the note over here. So for the next time around, we know. Between the first exile and the second exile, there was 11 years. So Rashi is basically saying he was within the 11 years. Yecheskel was saying that. So we have to say, Shebein Golus Yechonya l'Chorvos Yerushalayim, because the exile of Yechonya took place 11 years before the destruction of Yerushalayim, which means the 10 tribes were exiled first. Umisnabe, and who he was prophesying, who Yecheskel was prophesying, Sheyeh Botla HaYovel, that the Jubilee is going to be bottled. And if you sold your field, you ain't going to get it back. So he says, Efsher Yovel bottle, could it possibly be the Yovel is already bottled because the 10 tribes were already exiled with Yechonya beforehand, and Benovi Misnabe, all of Sheyeh, and now he's prophesying that it's going to be bottled, but it's already bottled. Rashi explains. Efsher Yovel bottle. From the days of the 10 tribes were exiled, the days of Cheskia was bottled. How do we know that Jubilee was bottled? That it was no longer Jubilee years? Because the Pasuk says clearly, Shenamar, the Kol Yeshveh, that you should call the Jubilee year, D'royer Kara L'Chol Yeshveh, should be for all the inhabitants. It's the Pasuk in Vayikra Chavei. So we learn from that it's only Bizman Shekol Yeshveh Aleha, only at the time when all the people are in Eretz Yisrael. V'loy Bizman Shegolu Mikzosim, and not when some of them are gone into exile. Nimtzo, it turns out that Mishagolu, Shevet Ruven, V'God, Ruven and God, Shevet Menashe. No, this is talking about those people who are on the other side of the Jordan. Kvar Botla Yevlos. So the Yevel were bottled. Now, I'm not sure why. Well, I thought we were talking about the 10 tribes over here. It says, it doesn't say that he went to bring back the God of Bnei Reuven. Here all of a sudden Rashi says, Shegolu Shevet Reuven v'God Echad Shevet Menashe Kvar Botla Yeves. I mean, because they were even before, I guess, plus then the other part of the kingdom. And the Cheskom is Nabel Achas Mashi Botla, we're going to be Mebat Left Isma. Elam Alamed, This teaches us Sheyirmiyah Hechzira. He brought them back. Yeshiyahu ben Amin Malach Aleim, and he was their king. And then they prophesied that they're going to go into exile again. Let's see the Rashi. El Malamed Sheyirmiyah Hechziram. He brought them back. So who did he bring back? That we said Hechziram. Who? So up till now we were saying the 10 tribes. But even though Rashi says that Shevet Reuven go to Cheresh and Asher, but everybody, because it didn't make a difference whether Shevet Reuven, you need Kol Yeshvei Oleh. So in that year that they found the Sefer in the Beis Hamikdash, that they sent it to Huldah Hanaviyah to tell her what's going on. That's the 80th year for Yeshayahu. So he says, al divrei hasefer. When Yeshayahu sent about the Sefer, Eitzel Huldah, by Huldah, lo Yesham Yirmiyah. Yirmiyah wasn't there. But why? Because he went to bring them back. But the Chosru Nimnoi says Yovel. And they started counting in the Yovel. And that's why Cheskel went and threatened them with Leim Karamemkar that it won't stay on the sale. But the Loi Hispiku Limnois, and they didn't have a chance. There was no 50 years. Elo Shmitis, but then the Beis Mikdash was destroyed, and then the Golus happened. So even Yerushalayim was destroyed then. But in the meantime, they were all back there. So Yeshayahu ben Amin Malach Aleim. Yeshayahu ben Amin, he was the king over the 10 tribes. Once he brought him back, who was their king? It was Yeshayahu ben Amin. Diksiv, because it says in Malachim Beit Perichal Gimel, by Yomer Mahatzin Halos. They asked, what is this, the tzion, the marker? This is talking about, Rashi says, by Yomer Mahatzin Halos, Asharani Roya. He says, what is this marker? This is, Rashi explains, while he was in Beiskel. Beiskel was in the territory of the north. So while he was in Beiskel, and it says, and he burned the bones of the priests that served in Beiskel for the other gods that Yeravam set up in Beiskel on the Mizbeach that Yeravam made. So he said, what is this tzion asher aniroya that I'm seeing over here? So vayemru elov anshe ha'ir. So the people told him, hakever ish elikim. The kaver is from the godly man, Asher Bo Yehuda, who comes from Yehuda. Vayikra es hadvorim ha'ela asher osiso ala mizbeach bebeiskel. He read all these things that you did on the mizbeach bebeiskel. I guess he prophesied that that's what's going to happen. So this was all with Yeshayahu. So what is Yeshayahu doing in the Mizbeach and Beiskel, which was the northern territory? Yeshayahu was the king of Yehuda. So Matibash Yeshayahu Mizbeach Beiskel Baloi Mishal Malchi Yisrael. He was from the kings of Israel. Sharisham Hamid Yerovam as Egel. In base scale, that was where Yerovam put the Egel. So that did not belong to the Malchi Yisrael. That was Yerovam. Elamelamed sheyoshiyahu molach aleim. Because this teaches us that Yeshayahu was the king over them. So basically, according to the Gemara over here, the 12 tribes came back. Yeshayahu was the king over them. And the hint to that is from this pasuk, that this was all going on in base camp. Rab Nachman Amar Mehacha, he brings a different pasuk from Isaiah Vav. So over there it says, Gam Yehuda Shos Ketzilach B'Shuvi Shvus Ami. Also, Yehuda is going to be strong when I return, the return of my people. So what do we see from here? Anybody can help me out from the Gemara over there? What do we see from this pasuk? Kam Yehuda Shos, also Yehuda. I think that maybe means that the king Yehuda will also be. No, and I got to look at it a little bit more. And hopefully next time, you guys have to look it up and see these few things that we were sort of hemming and hawing today. We'll leave it over here. And we're going up to Esther. And we'll see if we can do it next time. But anyways, in the meantime, today is actually a pretty special day because it's also Purim Cotton, Shushan Purim Cotton. This year, as we have 2 Adors, so we have 2 Adors, and Purim is done in the second Ador because we do Purim next to Pesach, but still it's called the Purim Katan. And the Rebbe points out that, if you have every 19 years, a cycle, a machzor 19 years, we have 7 leap years. So in 19 years, we have a regular Purim 19 times. And Purim Katan, we only have 7 times because it only comes when we have a leap year. So we only have 7 times. And then he points out sometimes when you have a guest which only comes occasionally, there's kind of a greater joy because you only meet him once in a while. So the Rebbe says, so therefore, on Purim Katan, there should be an extra joy, an extra simcha, because of this day. So in reality, we don't say Tachanun, not during the 14th, not today and not tomorrow, the 15th, because it's a semi-celebrations. But all the traditions of Purim take place on the second day. But the Rebbe, we already spoke, I think, in the previous time that the Rebbe points out this year we have everything double. We have 60 days and 60 days of Simcha. So certainly, the Rebbe says that if we have a question to make Simcha or not, it's always important to add to Simcha. Never make less, always make more, do more and more Simcha. And there's also the Rebbe relates something that happened in 1927 in the Purim Cotton. And those were the difficult years back in the Soviet Union, where the previous Rebbe was. This was after the revolution and the Bolsheviks in 1917. And the situation for the Jewish people who also suffered under the Tsar. They had a lot of limitations, a lot of restrictions, but it wasn't as bad as it came under Stalin, especially the Jewish people, the Frum people. The Rebbe happened to be, at that time, in Moscow. In Moscow, the biggest shul was the Hasidic shul, and they invited the Rebbe to give a talk in the shul. And when the government heard that the Rebbe, they made an announcement, the Rebbe was going to give a talk on Purim Katan, he was going to give a talk, they sent right away as a message that there were going to be secret agent at that gathering, and make sure that the Rebbe doesn't incite the people against the government, against the rules over there. And the president or the person of the shul said to the Rebbe, look, we got this message, so I'm asking you to be careful, not to speak anything, because you're going to get in trouble. The Hasidim is going to get in trouble. We're going to get in trouble. But the Rebbe gave a very fiery speech at the time. And the Rebbe quoted the verse that it says, Mipi oilim v'yonkim, in Tehillim, David HaMelech says, Mipi oilim v'yonkim yisadet ha'ois, lahashbis oyev u'misnakim. How do we get rid of the enemy, the one who's trying to hurt us, is from the mouth of the small children. Children learning Torah, it's a mouth that has no sin. Their study of Torah gives the power for us to outlast, to be strong, and to overcome all the enemies. And the Rebbe said it's been historically, there have been Hamans who tried to destroy the Jewish people. Mordechai gathered all the children together, and together they studied Torah, and they defied the evil decrees of Haman and Russia. And that's the only way that we will succeed. In every generation, you have people that are trying to hold us back, and the only way for us is to stay strong and to continue to educate our children of Torah and mitzvahs and giving them the spirit of Yiddishkeit. Now, of course, those words did not really sit well with the government. And matter of fact, that shortly thereafter, they actually arrested the previous Rebbe, and they were going to sentence the previous Rebbe to death by a firing squad. Great effort and great mercy of Hashem. They later on exchanged it for 10 years. Hard work in Siberia, and later on for 3 years, and then eventually they freed the Rebbe, and eventually they let the Rebbe leave Russia. But the Rebbe's message always stayed, we cannot be afraid, and we cannot be broken. We cannot, and sometimes it's from a government outside that is trying to enforce their ways on us. But sometimes we get broken from our inside. We have difficulties. We have challenges in various different ways, and it puts us down. So that's also an enemy. That's an enemy of a person. That's an oyev misnakim. That's an enemy that's trying to get us immobilized, put us down, and break us. Our answer is to teach and to learn Torah. The power of Torah is stronger than anything else, and that's the only way to succeed. We see now in the politics, the Russians are, once again, sometimes they say the bear can't change its color, its skin. It's see what happens. We're right here. It's hard to tell exactly whether they're bluffing or they're whatever the case is. But Hashem should help that, unfortunately, this would affect negatively. There's a big Jewish community in the Ukraine. There's a lot of suffering to go around between all peoples and the Jewish people and the religious people and the organizations. So hopefully, as the children responded to Mordechai, Utzu Eitzu v'Sufor, Dabru Dover v'Layakum Kimonu Keil, while you may seek counsel to destroy us, but Hashem will take it away, will take it apart. It's not be fulfilled because God is with us. So hopefully we'll be able to see this openly in an open way, and we will celebrate Purim, Cotton, Shushan Purim Cotton, Purim Gadol, Pesach, in a way of freedom, personal from ourselves, and for the Jewish community, and Zeicha to the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu. All right, this does our share for today. Hopefully, again, I wanted to mention again that next week we'll take a break, and we'll see in 2 weeks, Be'ezrat Hashem. Okay, next week is a break, and then we'll meet again 2 weeks from there.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you for coming and joining me.
Thank you.